Okay? So now we're going to talk about my newest work, which is my book called The Power of When. So fortunately, everybody in here has probably taken the quiz, so you can learn a little bit more. But remember, there are two distinct systems for sleep, right? We talked about the drive and we talked about the rhythm. It turns out that there's more than one rhythm, okay? And nobody is talking about it, and so I actually wrote a book about it to be able to give people that information, right? And so it turns out that there are multiple rhythms that are out there. But there actually is a best time to do just about anything. This is a great graphic where it talks about different things. So for example, we know that melatonin secretion starts at like 2100 hours. We know that bowel movements become suppressed at 22. We know that there's a heightened alertness at 10 o'clock in the morning. Highest testosterone secretion is at 9 o'clock in the morning. There's very regular patterns that are going on here. Very regular patterns for bodily function. Okay, but different people have what we call different chronotypes. And so we know that all hormones live a circadian life. This is just a few examples, right? So we see melatonin all the way to the right, we see adrenaline in the middle, we see cortisol all the way to the left, right? These are all hormones that are very, very predictable in our world, okay, and in our bodies. But it turns out that there are some people who are early morning people, and there are some people who are night people. How many people, by a raise of hands, have taken the quiz and are a lion? Okay, I'm going to tell you about you. How about people who are a wolf? There we go. I knew you were a wolf anyway. Mr. Snooze over here. There's a reason why you snooze so much, and it has to do with your chronotype. 10 to 15% of people are lions. 10 to 15% of people are wolves. We're going to get into it, but if you just looked at the melatonin curve, if you separated people by their chronotype, we actually see melatonin changes in the body based on chronotype. Okay, so again, not everybody has the same rhythm going on, and once you know your rhythm, you will be really surprised at what's going to happen. So everybody took the BioTime quiz, and it takes into account a lot of different things. Some of it's personality, some of it's sleep timing and preference, some of it's sleep drive. Now, one of the questions that I had during lunch was somebody said, I took the quiz, and it nailed me for one thing, but it didn't say the right things about my personality. I only had 35 questions to work with on an internet-type quiz, so there are hybrids that are out there. So if you were a bear, which about 50% of the room will probably be a bear, don't worry, you might actually lean towards one or the other, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So let's talk about my lions. Raise the hands of lions again. All right, lions, you are my COOs. You are my early morning optimists with medium sleep drive. You're my go-getters and my leaders a lot of the time. You're also likely to prioritize health and fitness, which is great. And you like to make a plan, and you're very anal about sticking to it, right? You like to go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4. You don't like to monkey around there. You don't want to jump all over the place. That's not where your strengths are. You have a tendency to go to bed early. Okay, you wake up around 5:30 in the morning, you go to bed around 8:30 at night. So while a lot of people have what I call lion envy, right, because they think that they're going to have that miracle morning and start everything at 5 a.m., there's a social consequence, okay? And the social consequence is you're exhausted by 8 o'clock, right? I mean, forget dinner and a movie. You're lucky to make it through dinner most of the time. Right? That's very, very, I can see, I know Dr. Lowe is over here. She was talking about this earlier. You told me I could pick on you, so I'm picking on you now. You'd be very surprised. Lions, while again, a lot of good operators and kind of very good at logistics and getting things done, on the social side of things, it can actually be quite challenging. Let's talk about our bears. How many people came up with the bear? Roughly 50-55% of people are bears. And bears are great. Bears are my extroverts. These are my solar sleepers with a very healthy sleep drive. These people are the glue for society. They have a tendency to get stuff done. My lions have a tendency to lead, but might not necessarily get through it all. My bears are the people that make it all happen. I love hanging out with bears because they're fairly extroverted, nice and open-minded. They also are very enjoyable. Like if you sit down with a bear at lunch, they're going to tell you the funny story that's going on at the office. They're going to tell you what TV show they're watching. They're very extroverted, a lot of fun to talk to. And believe it or not, most of society is built around a bear's schedule. What? Too fast? Well, you know you're getting all the slides, right? right? Jim has been super generous, and everybody's going to be able to get all the talk, so don't worry, you're going to get there. But I can make the slides available as well, don't worry. These are my bears. Everybody get a picture that wanted one? Okay, good. So let's talk about wolves. I am a wolf, just like you are. My wolves are my late night creatives. If you're an entrepreneur at some point in time in your life, you are probably a wolf, okay? These are my actors, my inventors, my authors. These are my super creative, but sometimes introverted people. We have a tendency, we might not like to take the stage, although I happen to like to take the stage. Generally speaking, we have a tendency to kind of lean back, we show up late at the party, and we decide if you're worth our time. If you are worth our time, then we are great friends, we're super loyal, and we're very, very interested in what you have to say. But we have to survey the scene a little bit to decide, right? Am I right? We have to, see, I got a wolf right back there. We have to survey the scene to really understand and know what's going on out there. So wolves have a tendency to go to bed usually not before midnight, and they would, if left to their own devices, could sleep until 8, 9 o'clock. But I've got extreme wolves as well, right? And so some of my wolves don't want to go to bed before 3 or 4 a.m., and they want to sleep until 10:30 or 11. Now, by the way, almost all teenagers are wolves. How many people have a teenager at home? You all met my son, Cooper. He just turned 15 today. I also have a daughter, Carson. She's 13, and we are the wolf pack, okay? It's unbelievable. All of us like to stay up late. It's not uncommon for all of us to be up late and hanging out and having fun. I'll tell you an interesting story about my daughter, Carson. So wolves are not very talkative until they kind of hit their peak time. And when I pick my daughter up from school, I say, "Hey, Carson, what's going on?" And she said, "Nothing." "How did you do in school today?" "Fine." Did you make any new friends?" "No." "Okay." If I walk into her room at 10:30 at night, and I've done this, ask the exact same questions, I can't shut her up. She'll talk to me for 45 minutes to an hour. And that's my daddy-daughter time, right? I mean, I'm up, I'm good with it. And so you have to learn how to adapt, because this becomes a great communication skill. When you know and understand what your chronotype is, and you know what your bed partners is, or your children, or other people that are in your home, you will be really surprised to learn what times are they going to pay attention to you, and what times are they not going to pay attention to you. By the way, I'm now having companies ask me to chronotype their entire company, and then they're scheduling meetings at very specific times, so that way they know, because they know that the creatives are all going to want to have a meeting later in the day, and we can actually get them to do something as opposed to falling asleep, versus my lions who want to manage everything in the morning, right? You can see where that disconnect can come very, very easily. Now let's talk about the dolphins. Dolphins are my problem children, but I love my dolphins dearly because these are the people that I usually see in clinic. Dolphins oftentimes have fairly erratic sleep schedules. They often have a very short sleep drive, but they crave longer bouts of sleep. And they may be self-diagnosed as insomniacs, or they may have been diagnosed by their doctor as insomniacs. But these are highly intelligent people. They get a lot of work done, but they do have a tendency to be a little bit on the obsessive-compulsive side. And one of the things I found with a lot of my dolphins is they're their own worst enemy in a lot of different ways. They're trying to get stuff done, and it has to be perfect. And when it's not perfect, they just don't want to turn it in. How many people can relate to that? Oh, I knew I'd had a bunch of dolphins in the audience. They can be very fast-talking, very well-read, and a lot of fun, but you got to be used to the dolphin, as it were. So who cares what your chronotype is? Why on earth would it matter? Well, one thing is it tells you when you should be going to sleep and when you should be waking up, but that's only a really small part of your day, right? I mean, why do we sleep? We sleep to wake. We sleep to have energy during the daytime. We sleep to be productive. We sleep to spend time with our loved ones. That's why we sleep. But wouldn't it be cool if we knew that there was a perfect time of day to do certain things? So what we did was remember how the hormones all work on a very circadian cycle? So what I did was I matched hormones to specific activities. This is getting kind of interesting here. And then, am I hitting the wrong button again? And then we actually figured out certain activities should occur at certain times during your natural rhythms. So if you're a lion, all of your rhythms happen a lot earlier in the morning. But if you're a wolf, all of your rhythms happen a little bit later in the evening. It gets really interesting really quickly. So I'm going to talk about several different health categories where this can come into play. So I added sex into the top one because that's the number one question that I get asked. So the slides are a little bit different on this one, but you'll get the picture. So when you're looking at something like sex, right, the hormones that you need are testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, vasopressin, oxytocin, and cortisol. And you want all of those to be high. The one hormone that you want to be low is melatonin. All makes sense, right? So guess what happens? 73% of people have sex between 10:30 and 11:30 at night. Guess where your hormones are that you need? They're all south. They're all down. And melatonin is high. Pretty interesting, right? So when you take a look at something like this and you say, well, Dr. Breus, what exactly are you trying to tell me? You guessed it. I want you having sex Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. All right? I want everybody in the room to try it. You will be pleasantly surprised. Say, Dr. Breus gave me the prescription to have sex at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning to see what happens. And here's what you'll find. So what happens when you don't have chronocompatibility? What happens when one person's a lion and the other person's a wolf? Well, I created a matrix to solve that problem here. And so you've got male chronotypes across the top and female chronotypes across the bottom. A couple of interesting things that came out. All women felt more desire between 6 and midnight. Lions had the strongest desire in the morning, and men would have sex whenever it was offered. Not a particularly big surprise, guys, but what are you going to do? So I created this matrix. It's actually in the book, which is going to be on sale afterwards if people want to check it out. It's pretty fun and pretty interesting. Also, I created 2 other matrices, one for lesbian couples and one for gay couples, because the hormones are very, very different. So we're keeping everybody in mind what we're saying here. And you'll notice there's an early evening time and an early morning time. Again, what we're trying to take advantage of is your natural biological rhythms and when your hormones are already going to be where you want them to be. So what about drugs? Let's talk about caffeine. Right? Well, we already talked a little bit about this. We talked about the cortisol rhythm, and we talked about your metabolic rhythm. What do I mean by that? Remember, cortisol is that thing that pulls you out of sleep in the morning, and so you don't want to add caffeine on top of that. You want to wait approximately 90 minutes, because drinking coffee the first thing in the morning does not wake you up. All it does, it gives you side effects. I promise you. So I've actually got here a schedule for everybody to decide when they want to have their first and or maybe second cup of coffee. By the way, all you wolves out there, you shouldn't have that second cup of coffee because you're really getting energy in the later part of the day. All right? You may have coffee in the morning, but that's because you're waking up at a time when you really shouldn't be waking up. So take a quick pick of this if you want to know when the perfect time is to drink some coffee. Is there a right time to run? The answer is yes, there is. It turns out that depends on what you want to do. If you want to burn fat, running in the morning makes the most sense because you're running on an empty stomach and you've got to get those reserves and fuels from somewhere, so that's going to be a better time for you. Now, I will tell you this. Generally speaking, I ask my lions to exercise in the early evenings. Michael, you just said fat burning, I could do it. I'm not as concerned about fat burning for my lions. A lot of times they're pretty fit anyway. If you exercise in the early evening and you're a lion, it actually gives you energy to make it through till about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So that's something that a lion and wolf partnership could do together because that's about the time that a wolf wants to exercise. It's not always the time that a lion wants to exercise, but it gives them that energy. It also gives them an opportunity to be together and enjoy something together. If you're doing it for performance, it's very, very different, right? And so if you want to run a race, you should be training during the time when your races would be. There's a lot of data. I've done some work with some elite athletes, and one of the things that we know is if you train at roughly the time that you're going to be performing, you actually train better, and you actually perform better. Training for strength, the rhythm to grow muscle has very little effect from a chronotype standpoint. However, strength is very, very different. So making a muscle bigger is very different than making a muscle stronger. Making a muscle stronger, we know that lions do better in the afternoons, early evening for bears, and late evening for dolphins and wolves, because that has a tendency to calm them down in the late evening. By the way, if you're a bear and you try to exercise in the early evening, good luck. Because one of the things I've learned from many of my bears is if they don't exercise in the earlier part of the day, they just won't do it. right? Anybody have that experience before? So if it's between not exercising and you need to exercise a little bit earlier and you're a bear, go ahead and exercise a little bit earlier. The pros outweigh the cons for sure. Also, your pain tolerance is different, especially for wolves. The reason that we don't like to exercise is because as it gets later in the day, we perceive pain more and more, and exercise can be painful. So something to think about if you're a wolf and you're thinking about exercise. Let's talk about alcohol. There's actually 3 different rhythms that concern alcohol. There's something called your tolerance rhythm. Did you know that if you drink a mimosa at 9 o'clock in the morning, you will stay drunk for a significantly longer period of time than if you drink it in the afternoon? So it turns out that your body produces something called dehydrogenase, which is something that breaks down alcohol, and that actually doesn't occur in your circadian rhythm until early to late afternoon, kind of around something called happy hour. That's why you can drink more during happy hour, and that's why bars actually had happy hours, because they found that people have a tendency to drink more. And by the way, you get a different kind of uplifting feeling, as it were, when you drink in the later part of the day. And I actually have a whole slide on strategic drinking here. So, when is your best time to have a beer or a glass of wine so that it doesn't put you into Sleepyville? These are some of the best times. So for my dolphins, between 6 and 8, lions a little bit earlier, bears kind of in the middle, and of course my wolves, you're my late night partiers, you guys are going to be doing better then. But again, be careful. You don't want to go too far, because then you are going to end up in a situation which could affect your sleep. I also brought up some hangover hacks, because these are things that people may want to do. Number 1, drink 1 glass of water for every alcoholic beverage. Remember, alcohol is a diuretic. It will make you pee. So you want to be very, very careful, because you're going to start losing water very quickly. I've read at least 3 articles to show that coconut water helps with a hangover. I saw the science, and I was hard to believe it, but I'm telling you, give it a shot. If you're prone to hangovers, that might be very helpful for you. Again, stop drinking about 3 hours before bed. And it also turns out that magnesium and vitamin B in the morning are 2 of the things that you get depleted from alcohol very, very quickly. So go ahead and take some supplements. Don't take them the night before. Doesn't work nearly as well as if you take them in the morning. And then finally, just time seems to really have a thing for it. So going to bed. So I told you how to choose your optimal bedtime, but I didn't tell you how to do it for your chronotype. So lions and bears. Raise a hand, lions and bears. All right, this is what you should do. 90 minutes from your wake-up time, 5 sleep cycles, add 20 minutes to fall asleep. Roughly 7.8 hours from your wake-up time is roughly when you want to have as your bedtime. Interestingly, though, when you look at dolphins and wolves, they don't have a tendency to have 5 sleep cycles. They have a tendency to have 4 sleep cycles. So the timing is significantly different. Okay, so what am I saying here? I'm saying that for my lions and my bears, they will have a tendency to get closer to 8 hours, but for my wolves and dolphins, don't drive yourself nuts if you're not getting it. You're going to be doing just fine if you can get 6.5 to 7 hours. Okay, does that make sense? So I think I even have bedtimes on here. Yeah, so here we go. Wake-up times and bedtimes. These are, again, averages across your chronotype. Again, interesting information, because everything predicates off the bedtime and the wake-up time, because that's when your hormones kick back in, and that's when you can know is the perfect time of day to do certain things. So let's quickly talk about productivity, right? Because that's one of the big reasons that we're here. We're here for our health, but we're also here to be more productive. I'm going to show you 4 different areas that you can be more productive in just knowing the right time of day to do a particular activity now that you know your chronotype. So the first one is brainstorming. So this is really fascinating research, but it turns out that there are 4 different rhythms that are important for brainstorming. One is called the connectivity rhythm. This is when both sides of your brain have a tendency to talk to one another. That doesn't happen throughout the daytime. The second one is the distraction rhythm. How many people had their greatest idea ever while they were in the shower, right? Or on the treadmill, or riding a bike? That's because your body is physically distracted by one thing and allows your mind to get to something else that's going to be more important. There's also something called the novelty rhythm. This is very interesting. So when you meet somebody new or you have a new experience, you actually have an elevation of something called dopamine. Why is dopamine so important? Aside from the fact that it is the thing that all of us are addicted to, and that's the reason why drugs became so popular in the 60s, it actually helps stimulate new experiences and helps you brainstorm significantly better. So if you want to have that next great idea, it's actually a good idea to talk with and meet with new types of people. You ever had that experience where you meet somebody new and you're like, oh my gosh, we're connecting so well and we're having all of this brainstorm and we're getting all these ideas out there? The reason why is because you've actually increased your level of dopamine, which has released some of that in your system. The other has to do with REM sleep. Remember how I said you move information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory during REM sleep? Well, that's going to be critically important because now you can pull that information back out when you need it, right? And so what are some of the most productive times? Actually, turns out in the morning, you have two really moments of what I call groggy greatness. And again, this is all in the book, but you'll notice the very first times, a lot of people are still asleep, right? So that's during REM sleep. So if you, right as you wake up in the morning, remember that notepad I said to put by your bed? Before you go to sleep, put a topic on it that you want to brainstorm in the morning. And when you wake up, right after you wake up, grab that notepad and write down everything you can think about that topic. You will be shocked within 2 or 3 days at how many really amazing ideas that you're going to start coming up with. If you're looking for that next idea generator, this is one of the things. But generally speaking, we see that in the later part of the evening, when people start to get a little sleepier or a little groggier, that's when that stuff comes out as well. Not from a productivity standpoint, but from a creativity standpoint. Because we've got to know when to be creative, so then we know when to be productive. How about memorizing things? Well, we know Jim Quick is the master of that, but there's actually times of day where you're going to be better at it than others. There's 3 different rhythms here that you need to take into account. One is the acquisition of information, one is the consolidation of that information, and then one is the recall of that information. So it turns out that based on your chronotype, by the way, everybody can acquire data almost throughout the day. But it's the consolidation and it's the recall where the data is very, very interesting. So that information consolidates during REM sleep. So you don't have to worry about that time. It's just the recall time that you're going to find is going to be very, very helpful. So if you had to learn a bunch of statistics or you have to take a big test or something like that and you want to recall information, these times based on your chronotype have been shown in the data to be very, very effective at helping you out quite a bit. How about presentations? How many people in here have to present on a fairly regular basis? Okay, so what's really interesting about this is we know this has a lot to do with people's chronotype. Lions love to be in front of a room. They love to get up there, they love to talk, they love to hang out and discuss things. Dolphins, not nearly as much. Dolphins would be very happy if they can stay in the back, do their thing, and maybe talk a little bit about their idea one way or another. Not all the time, but certainly generally speaking. My wolves, they'd actually rather relocate to happy hour, generally speaking, than be up on stage, because my wolves are my party animals. And then I went too far again. My bears are actually just happy to be in the audience. They're not necessarily the biggest presenters in the universe, but they can, and they do, when they really want to get up there, be very, very good presenters. How about rhythms for attending a presentation? So what is the most flexible time of day to call a meeting or to give a presentation? There was a really interesting study that took a look at this. The most flexible time of day that most people have is between 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The second best time is between 10 and 11. The most flexible, the least flexible is at 9:15 in the morning because you're just starting your day. You want to kind of get in there and get your stuff done. And then the second worst time is lunch. Nobody wants to go to a lunch presentation, let me just tell you right now, unless it's what we call an eating meeting, where you're providing food and then everybody seems to show up for free lunch. The last one, keep hitting the button wrong. There we go, is looking at a day of the week. Tuesday afternoons, people have the most flexibility for some reason. This was a study that was done based on a scheduling software where they looked at over 500,000 meetings and then attendance at those meetings because it was like a conference call thing that people called into. The data was very, very impressive. Monday morning, nobody wants to have a meeting. I remember I used to work for a guy that used to have 7 a.m. Monday morning meetings every single week. He was like, we got to kick off the week in a really good way. I'm a wolf. Okay, I would fall asleep regularly at these meetings. It was not good for my career, let's just put it that way. Now you know why I work for myself. Giving a presentation, this is a whole nother thing. When is your energy going to be high? When are you going to be able to give the most out of your presentation, right? So when are you going to be on your peak? And then when is your audience going to be able to engage with you the most? So there are on times of day and off times of day. So if you want to take a picture of one thing today, this is it, okay? Is what are your on times of day and what are your off times of day? It turns out that you have two definite times of day where your energy is going to be the highest naturally, and you're going to be able to present yourself in the best light. And I've listed them all here. Hopefully people are taking a picture, but you see one is in the earlier morning and one is in the later afternoon. Okay? Now, for some people, it's a fairly wide spread on the afternoon one. But the things you want to avoid, right, are those times in between. Did everybody get that? Did I go too fast on that one? Yeah, the lines are super long because so the lines actually, where are my lines? Yeah, the lines actually, oh no, I'm sorry, that should be 9 p.m., not 9 a.m. I apologize, because that would mean they would be giving a presentation in their sleep. All right, thank you for noticing. I will change that in my slides. I'm sure my wife has already scribbled that down and told me that I need to change it. Audience engagement. After 30 minutes, 1 in 7 people will zone out. Okay, I've been up here for almost an hour. So there's a whole lot of people who have probably zoned out. After 45 minutes, 1 in 3 will be a zombie. So you want to keep it short, all right? And something that Jim was actually mentioning the other day, which is called cognitive backlog occurs. Your brain can really only handle so much information at a time. You've been drinking from the fire hose with me right now because I'm throwing a lot of information at you. Don't worry, remember, you're going to get this, you're going to get the whole thing, and you'll be able to have my slides, that's fine as well. But remember, you don't want to give too much information because sometimes people really can't get to it. You want to kind of stick to the salient points if you possibly can. I've actually created the best and the worst times. The thing I want you to focus in on more is the worst times. 9 a.m., again, lots of morning fog. 2 p.m., lunch dip. And 6 p.m., most people are just pretty much done for the day. How about making a decision? This one can be very, very interesting. You know what your on-peak times are, and you know what your off-peak times are, because I just had everybody take a picture of it. So you really want to look at how you make that decision. It's very interesting because when you're on peak, you make decisions in a logical way, and when you're off peak, you make decisions in an emotional way. We all know that logical decisions 9 times out of 10 are going to be better than emotional decisions. So you want to be very, very careful to know and understand when you're making these decisions. What are these influenced by? Sleep deprivation for one, personality, as well as what we call the procrastination rhythm. So when we take a look, these turn out to be some of the best times of day to make those decisions, simply because these are your on times. So what you'll notice is if you take a picture of the on times and you take a picture of this, the times should coordinate. Now the question is, did I mess up the lines again? Okay, no, I didn't mess up the lines too badly. All right, good to know, good to know. So how do you stick to your chronotype? Well, first of all, keep a consistent bedtime. I think I've said that like 100 times, but I really want to drive that point home. The more consistent you are, the more your body craves this level of consistency, and it's going to be much better off for you. Eat roughly every 4 hours to avoid blood sugar problems. We know that when blood sugar goes up and down, it can definitely have an effect on you in many different ways. Try to exercise at your correct time for your chronotype. You will find that not only are your workouts better, but you will get stronger and faster. And then finally, limit chrono disruptors like caffeine, alcohol, things of that nature. Now, one question that everybody always asks me is, can you hack your chronotype? So if I'm a lion and I want to be a wolf, can I do that? It's not as easy as you might imagine. I've done this before with people where we've used light therapy because we can move people's circadian rhythm with light, but you have to do it every single day. You can't miss a day because your body naturally wants to fade back. The chronotypes, by the way, are genetic. Okay? These are based on something called the PER3 gene, which all of us have. And so you're fighting Mother Nature when you're trying to go outside of your chronotype. But you can move a little bit. You can probably move one. So if you're a bear, you can inch your way towards being a lion or inch your way towards being a wolf. If you're a wolf, you can inch your way towards being a bear. Those types of things. But you're going to have a really rough time going from wolf to lion. That's not going to be an easy transition at all. And let's see. How do you make yourself into a morning person? I got asked this question, so I figured I'd do a slide. This is one of my last slides, I promise. Going to bed at the right time for you every single night, including the weekends. Never hit the snooze Button, my wolf friend over here. Get direct sunlight for 10 minutes in the morning. Then you also want to drink an 8-ounce glass of room temperature water. Let there be light and music. So how many people listen to music in the morning? Oh, that's surprising, not as many as I thought. So I walk into my son's room to get him in the morning, and he makes his way into the shower, and he's got one of these UE boom things, and he's blasting the tunes, right? And I love it, okay? If you really want to help yourself wake up in the morning, music will cause emotional response in your system. Go ahead and put on some music. Don't put on classical, okay? Don't put on your favorite love song. Put on somebody like the Beastie Boys, right? Or somebody that you really like to get rocking and rolling to. So whatever your favorite music is that you're listening to, jam out. I mean, don't go dancing in the shower because you're going to fall and maybe hurt yourself. But you really want to do something to be able to help you out in terms of waking yourself up in the morning. Obviously, exercising your body and mind in the morning, and take a cool, not cold shower. So at the end of your shower, for the last minute, take the faucet and every 15 seconds or so, move it about a quarter of a turn to turn the hot off. Just a quarter of a turn, quarter of a turn, quarter of a turn. I don't want you to go cold, I just want you to go cool. What ends up happening is your blood vessels begin to dilate, and it actually helps wake you up even more. Okay? So let's see, with that, am I done? Wait.